Now, who was in it? Because George Jackson was a black man, and he was a field marshal for the Black Panther Party. And when people invited me to meet the George Jackson Brigade, I became involved at that time. But I became involved mostly to see if they were representing the George Jackson Brigade, and they were, to the very end, you know. Like I said, I wasn't looking to win no revolution at that time, but I was giving it my all.
那我问他的问题是，因为他的合伙人 Andy， 在一个访谈里面有说过，当初他们建立这个组织的时候，他以为革命就在那个时候，就是那个时候就会有美国就会被推翻那种概念，可是他之后才发现，之后他就发现其实那个不是正确的。
This yours?
当时他就发现，其实那个不是正确的，而且他有，就是很多反响。我说 OK， 那是我们其中做的一个不对的这个传承。那我就问他，你有没有同样的这个反思，同样的这个感慨？有没有觉得当初你搞这个的时候的预算是正确的？那他说当初呢，他其实一向来就知道没有没有什么会发生，因为他看那个黑人运动已经是黑炮的末期，而且觉得其实他们也不会再有一次的这个爆发，而且当初白人也是同样没有那么激烈的这个组织，其中白人其实也有，因为当初分的是种族分嘛，那有黑炮白人有白人的组织，那原住民有白人的组织这些，亚洲人也有亚洲人。那当时的白人组织是所谓的 underground， 就也是一个地下的一个那他们也是同样做 underground， 也是有做一些 property inspection， 还有炸一些东西。可是他说他当初已经知道，其实不是有这个革命的这个预算，可是他身为黑炮的时候，他当初也有做一个发誓过。说他们永远不会一定会继续，而且会前进，所以他就抱着这个信仰、这个原则，就仍然是继续组织。
I had a follow-up question about JM's question. Actually, is that because you already realize when you start the more aggressive action, you already realize that the movement is not gonna support it or not gonna, make another. Yeah. So do you feel so distant from your people? I mean, like the black community or people inside the movement who don't want to escalate more, or don't want to do more, they think it's enough. What do you think about that? Do you think these things, or how do you feel?
Well, I look at a lot of the communities now who should be escalating because the issue is really poverty. That underclass or third class at the very bottom, it's growing bigger and bigger, and I'm surprised that they're not moving more militarily, more politically.
You mean here?
Huh?
You mean here in Hong Kong?
Here in Hong Kong, really all over the world. Capitalism just seems to be laying back and say, we got them now. They're not going to even bust a grape, and we got to bust a grape or something, But sure, I can say I'm disappointed. My opinion and my feelings really don't mean that much. I just try to give an example by doing as much as I can. Like when I'm working with prisoners, doing these newsletters, I can't get out and keep on marching like I used to, and I'm tired of marching around in circles. I do as much as I can to spur on a new generation. And some of those people in prison are getting politicized. that is taking effect, and some of the letters that are coming out are really, strong and impressive letters, very political. And I'm glad to be able to edit them and send them back to other prisons so they could, critique them or try and find out, hey, is this what the world is really about? So I'm just going to keep on going on to the end, just like Ed is, and maybe I don't know if we're the last, but we're going to keep on going on.
So in some senses, you combat apathy by actually circulating and making sure information keeps circulating.
Right, exactly. Facilitating those who want to do something.
Does that answer your question? Does that answer your question? So apathy is when somebody's just like, I don't know what to do. Fuck, I don't care anymore. So I said, so the way you combat apathy is by circulating information, by keeping everybody informed and getting new perspectives on things. So maybe that's a way you could use to.
Okay.
I do a quick translation for the whole thing.
Okay.
我頭先問咗一個問題，而家翻譯翻咧就係因為佢就係喺黑豹黨一隊相對末期嘅時候，去參與喺嗰啲暴力嘅組織，去炸唔同嘅地方啦。咁其實再之後，其實嗰個運動亦都有啲沒落嘅趨勢啦。咁佢參與嘅時候，已經有呢個趨勢。咁其實佢係想再推進嗰個運動啦，定係佢係諗緊啲乜嘢？有冇喺做完呢一啲炸成日之後，會覺得嗰啲人係冇跟住佢去啦，所以好失望咧？咁佢係有覺得失望嘅。咁但係佢就係覺得，總之對佢嚟講嗰一樣嘢就係唔可以完咯。咁如果做完，呢一啲相對暴力嘅。
Do they have beer in there?
Yeah.
Some of them? Yeah. Would you give me one? How much?
Put your money over.
監獄嘅組織，咁佢完全都對啲年青人嘅希望啦，我嘗試簡單咁講就係，咁就係覺得令到佢哋一啲本來係純粹所謂社會性犯罪，即係搶嘢偷嘢嗰啲層次嘅犯，佢哋願意再參與多啲，或者政治抗爭嘅諗法喺佢哋個面臨㗎，其實佢都已經覺得好重要咯。咁佢將嗰個目標再放得遠啲，唔係再去期望，行到尾就會有革命㗎。希望我冇翻譯得太過舊時，係咩？Should we talk to each other?
Yeah. It's just got a little thin around here, so yeah.
我是说也可以问你，因为你也有一定的了解性的。我们可以互相谈。
然后要不再请家长。
Thank you very much.
我有一个问题就是，
First beer I had since a hit.
看这个运动，它为什么会走下坡？就是它的客观因素。刚才有提到，其实是它的体内部的一些东西。那它的客观因素，社会当时候的一个发展。原因是一直它是这样子，然后现在其实整个黑人的这个反抗运动跟过去的这个黑人民权运动的这个联系和关系又是在哪里？就是它承接了这个历史的一些东西，然后现在的状况怎么样
？So the question was, what do you think?
Sorry,
I know one question, but maybe this can also. You don't have to answer all of it.
It's too late now.
I want my beer. Enough now.
Your idea.
Okay. Yeah, the question was, what are the objective conditions that you think led to the decline of the Black liberation struggle back in the 60s and 70s? That's part one. And part two is, how do you think the lessons from that time were taken in or not into the movement today in Ferguson?
Number one, the government has gotten more sophisticated with fighting radical movements, underground movements.
So counterintelligence.
Yeah, counterintelligence, and some of it has been revealed, but a lot of it has not. A long time ago, our use of such things as paper underground newsletters worked quite well. Not anymore. The electronic newsletters that are being used right now, they're good because they work really fast, but they're traceable. So people aren't only traceable when they can really identify an underground group or a really violent group, like they can't even catch Al Qaeda, but you know what I'm talking about? They are getting more and more sophisticated. Okay, the second part of the question is.
What is the lesson from the past movement?
Oh, how it affects.
Is there any lessons that learn from the past?
It's a bit of a face thing.
Today's US about the Black
You know, there is a lesson, and it has to do with the sophistication of the government. We're dealing with the government as an opponent, as an antagonist. Okay, and we can't let them undermine everything we're doing, and they have ways of hacking now. You know, we're pretty good hackers ourselves, but when we have something going, they have the ability now to interrupt it. And like I said, it's getting more and more sophisticated, and people don't realize it. When Obama ran for president, he got a lot of money from a lot of little people through the internet, you know, and the methods have been figured out now how to hack that. They're doing electronic voting, and there's not only the government, but people of special interest have figured out how to change votes around with the electoral machines that are made now. They have contributed a great deal to the legislature to make laws that block what we're trying to do. Like we were talking about the Patriot Act and those things. They talk about the fighting terrorists, but they're deliberately blocking what we're doing and threatening people. And people got to stand up. Don't be afraid. I mean, they're going to threaten us with all kinds of mean things. I'm telling you, life sentences or death or whatever, because they're making terrorists out of people who aren't causing terror at all. We're going to tell you what terror is. You know, a terror is a mouse under the table now. Yeah, but they're creating terrorists. You know, terrorists don't exist. They never have existed. It's the government creates them. I have a friend who's done approximately 30 years in prison, political prisoner. Time to get out. They created a law saying that what you did was terrorism, so you can't get out even though you've done your sentence. So they're making laws like that. We have to learn how to become more sophisticated than they are, not only with our political rhetoric, but with our political tactics too. And I was looking at some of the cell phones and things that are made over in Foxconn, etc. And I didn't realize how cheap those things are when they're made. At the making, it's about a couple bucks. And so it's pretty much throwaways. And Al Qaeda had realized that you're buying them by the suitcase, you know, probably through Hong Kong too. Somebody buys them and ships it on down there. They use one, just throw it away. And we have to become that sophisticated when we decide seriously to start our democratic process of making our voices louder, because we're speaking through the internet now. We're not just speaking, you know, the little newsletter in the prison or in the neighborhood. When we speak on the internet, it shoots across our nations, across the world, and asking people to move immediately. When people say that, I think that's how Wall Street started, right? I mean, not Wall Street, the Occupy. That's how the Occupy started, is using the internet. And other people picked it up, and then the government says, okay, so that's what you're using, and they stepped in. So,
well,
can I respond to
okay. Just one moment. It seems like anonymity is quite an important aspect of this. Mm-hmm. So,
if
it's possible, if you use something called Tor, T-O-R, go online and take a look at that and see how it works. And you can use that to communicate anonymously to a degree.
You have to use it correctly.
You have to use it correctly.
It's very difficult for them.
这是我的概念，不是他说的。对不起，我没有翻译。可是我觉得有很多人在研究为什么在黑人运动当时的死的那么高潮，后来有下降。其中一个很大的因素就是 有这个 point out pro， 就是一个很 sophisticated 一个很就用人家心理学得很细的一个政府来打压这个运动的方式。那刚才不是说他有军阀上的把这些黑人只是运动的领袖，很多人就是给他杀死。那另外一方面，他就是在运动里面有间谍啊，而且利用这样很谣言弄的这些谣言弄得像普通，只是开始没有人家就没有面对面的谈话，而是看到我收到这封信是我的对手寄给我的，他说他明天要来杀我，这种很就是激发人家的东西，可是那个culture 那个文化是没有面对面去讲清楚，是真的有寄这封信。而且现在其实，在组织的运动里面，很多人有谈起这个经验。那讲我们现在呢，身为下一代的主要怎么从这个经验学习？那其中一个很重要的经验是，他用一个很父权主义的、很 macho 的那种我们要第一个做直接去冲的那种概念来弄得人家好像说你不冲，你一定是不信我们这个运动，你一定是缩头乌龟，你一定是不是认真的人，就是用这个他不去听人家，你为什么不要冲？运动没有实现到你所需要的什么地方，他没有去问这些问题，反而就是用冲不冲作为一个唯一的 criteria for whether 唯一的条件来揣测你是不是一个真正的专家。那这个现在我们在反思过去的时候，都会说，其实那是一个很不全主义的一种来态度来衡量一个人的对活动的运动的这个 level。那我觉得现在我们用 feminism 来谈起因为我觉得也另外一个dichotomy 假的这个对立就是feminism 或关于社区的活是慢性的，就是不要冲的，就是其实那个而真正关心东西是一定要冲，这个是一个很假的一个对立，因为其实你到现在很多运动员也是有很多女人、很多女性的主义的人都是非常多的可是不是军阀方式的那个而是来跟人家谈起是什么东西会激发你到你关注的是什么，而且是原来相信每一个人所要就是 take people's concern seriously and not impose our own ideas of what really is and not take on patriarchal notions of what is and you know 因为如果我们唯一的条件是要作为政治的的话，那些坐轮椅的人，那些在家里有孩子的人，他们可以在前线吗？那种问题要问也许他们是要在前线，那我们怎么去支持协助人家在轮椅的人可以在前线？那是需要大家互相来事先谈起我们要怎么样去做运动，而不是到时的时候就说我一个人冲，你如果冲不上的话，你就很烂，那种对吗？那另外一个是我觉得sorry
刚才听到吗？那边
听的。
还有另外一个，他的朋友也有说过Admit 也有说过，他其中在反思过去的运动的时候，是觉得他们虽然传的很大，可是很肤浅，就是很像一杯水就趴在一大的 surface area， 可是弄得不深入。所以他其中一个反思是讲，其实他希望当初也有做一些更深入的这个politicization， 才不会那么容易的散掉。还有你从今天的运动，从过去学习到什么lessons？ 那其中就是我觉得，我不知道香港有没有这个倾向，这个 pattern。可是，在当初60年代很激烈的人的那些领袖，现在已经被融入政策，已经被融入政府，所以他们会来说：“我当初非常非常积极。” 所以我身为这个前辈，我要告诉你，慢慢来就好，你不要去反抗啊。你反暴力的时候不要去，你反警方暴力的时候不要那么极端啊，要跟他们一起商量啊，就利用他们自己在过去的名誉来抵押现在的年轻人。那其实，在Ferguson这是一个很重要的一个现象，因为当Michael Brown刚刚射死的时候，群众很多人出来就开始来抗议，可是当时也是。其实这是比较复杂一点，可是 Ferguson 那个地方，就是在很多美国城市，你看西雅图啊、纽约那些比较旧的城市、比较老城的芝加哥，他们已经建立有这个维权的这个组织 ，is a counter-insurgency method, is to establish the leaders and co-opt them, leaders from the 60s and co-opt them into the current infrastructure to put down struggle. So 其中的2个人是 Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. 每当有黑人运动的时候，那个 Democratic Party 就会把这2个人拉出来，就叫他们讲一些很天花乱坠的东西，后来叫人家最后一句是不要暴动，回家睡觉，不要到街上，就是这种维权的一个维稳的一个 infrastructure。可是 Ferguson 它发生在 Ferguson 这个地方，其实它不是它的地理位置是非常重要的，因为它不是一个旧的城市，所以政权在那个地方还没有建立好一个维稳的 infrastructure， 所以它其实 Ferguson 是很明显的是一个白人主义的地方，因为它很像88%的人民是黑人，可是它警察很像只有1-2个黑人，而且他的那个mayor、police 这些全部都是白人，他整个 infrastructure 都是白人，所以当这个事件发生的时候，警察就立刻用一个很军阀的方式来面对，所以拉出他的全部的 the tanks and the ammunition, the guns， 就是他从伊拉克战争之后剩余就卖给这些美国不同的警队。那 Ferguson 当然也有买了，可是他们其实也不会用。我听说其中有一个照片，他把那个枪的头反过来放到他们自己的面前。Anyway， 可是他们没有这个they are very unsophisticated， 他们没有想到这个心理是怎么样来压下这个民众，所以他立刻就用军阀的方式，没有用心理的方式。所以你问那个从过去学习的 lesson， 就是当 Ferguson 那时候发生的时候，他们没有一个维稳的 infrastructure 来，他就那个 Ferguson 的St. Louis County governor， 他那个市长他就叫一个 highway patrol captain， 所以是一个非常低公路警察的部门的长。whatever captain 长官，他是一个黑人，就叫他来take over the whole police department。可是其实他是那么低层的，后来把他拉上来，叫他做那个，唯一是因为他是黑人。那这个 Ron Johnson 是他名字，他到街上就一直在报那些其他黑人，就讲我明白你的痛苦，我要帮忙你，我要帮忙你。可是当时那边的青年就说，你这个烂人，我们在把你当回去，我们不把你当成是我们的领袖。那其实，在运动方面，那是一个很重要的过程。It was a very important breakthrough because it's not taking the co-opted leadership as the voice of the movement. It was taking the voices of everyday youth and people who have been expressing the harassment and police brutality and their activities as the leadership of the movement. And there's been amazing acts of confrontation. Yeah, so I was because she was asking what were some of the lessons that was learned from the 60s, and I was saying one of the big ones was not taking the established leadership from the 60s, not believing in the Jesse Jacksons and the Al Sharptons and their role, their counterinsurgency positions in putting down movements. And in Ferguson, what we have seen, and in other cities in the U.S., what we have seen is the youth are taking the leadership, and they are rebelling against
the formalized, institutionalized, co-opted black leadership. And that's a huge development from the 60s. Oh, he knows the Ron Johnson. Oh yeah, sorry. Yes. So what had happened in the Ferguson movement was that Ferguson is not it's not like Chicago or Seattle or New York where there's an established leadership from the 60s that the counter-insurgency leadership that has been used to co-op struggle. So Ferguson was really a new, quote-unquote, new suburb where black folks had just moved in. The rates of police violence was really high, but it was very blatant white supremacy that was operating in Ferguson. So you have 80% of the population is black, and you have maybe 1 or 2 black police officers. The mayor's white, and there was no pretense that this is a co-opted, that this is a liberal city. And so when the riots took place in Ferguson, they didn't have an established black leadership to drag out and to try to put down the movement. In fact, they over-militarized and they pulled out their tanks, they pulled out their guns, and they incurred a lot of anger from the citizens of Ferguson. And it made national news. I mean, I think we've all seen the pictures. And so in their desperate move to try to co-opt this movement, they transferred the authority of the police department to the highway patrol, and they got the captain of the highway patrol. I mean, it's just a ridiculous thing. How does a highway patrol take over the jurisdiction of the city? And so they got the highway patrol captain, his name is Ron Johnson, and he's a native of Ferguson, and they got him to come be the leadership in Ferguson and hug the people and say, oh, I feel your pain, I support your right to march. But people saw through that. People saw that immediately as a way to co-opt the movement and to get them to silence themselves.
I heard of a similar event in Oakland actually. They had a gathering in memorial of Black Lives Matter lost the police shootings, and it was organized by some business people actually in Oakland. They tried to have Oakland Police Department come and give speeches of how nice the police was and how they wouldn't do this kind of thing anymore. It was pretty much the same idea. It was actually announced that it was a scandal and everything.
So 他说在 Oakland 在加州的一个奥克兰也有同样这个倾向，那些中产阶级的人，他们也邀请了奥克兰的警察部门出来说，哦，这些人要改变啊，他们要reform 啊。你看这些黑人即使过去被杀的，你看现在这个警察部门要改进。那他说这其实也是其中一个维稳的一个政策。
Those people who try to take advantage of this movement, their goal, they actually showed up on Facebook that their goal was to be shown in the newspaper, in the New York Times, as the people who have saved Oakland of this mess. And someone saw that on their Facebook profile and posted it, and that's what started the whole trial over this stupid idiot. So,
他们要利用这个他们的行为来说自己其实是救了 Oakland 有这个名誉。可是我好奇是你们在这边有没有同样的这个维稳的 infrastructure？
Well, none of that sort of infrastructure here at the moment.
Like counterinsurgency, how does counterinsurgency look like in Hong Kong?
I don't think the techniques are that well developed, but I think from one point of view is that degree of poverty is not of such a high level.
well, it's almost as high as US actually. Depending where you're looking. Depending where you're looking, yeah.
Do you want to start for me?
Yeah, do you not agree with me that a lot of people here actually have got enough money to be able to be in a situation where they are not desperate?
No, I think most desperate people are actually squeezing over there to at least survive. Earn the money to survive. So they're totally disconnected like to social media or about the right now in Hong Kong. Somehow we can say most of them they care about their lives, their own interests, or participate in their lives. But actually there are many people who are not very
infrastructure? Where's the group of people that are keeping this going? It seems like
it's not nothing. There's nobody.
That's my point. And if it wasn't a more desperate situation, people were being, if police were coming up to businesses and arresting people, I believe then the infrastructure would be formed. And I think.
There's a class of people. I call them the affluent poor. They think they're middle class and they're $30,000 and $40,000 in debt. I mean, most of them, they really think they're middle class in debt. So the affluent poor are in worse condition than the actual poor who don't own any debt, but don't have a place to stay.
And because they're being controlled.
Yeah.
They're being controlled by the debt and all this.
Exactly.
I do a very quick translation. 頭先因為我個朋友都講嘅，即係佢頭先呢首先就係問起香港嘅情況，想我哋講下多啲啦。咁然之後，因為我個朋友就話嗱，我哋講知道其實即係嗰啲將意義嘅諗法納入個機制啊，起碼扮晒嘢嘅嗰啲咧，即係有冇喺政府度發生啊，或者即係冇係啊，有冇啲統戰嘢啊，或者最底層嘅人喺邊啊？咁唔知我個朋友就覺得係冇乜底層嘅人嘅，即係大家都有一啲基本嘅生活，所以咧就
即係將嗰啲
都冇一啲嘢係納入佢哋嘅。我就回應翻就係話其實底層嘅人好撚忙，好撚難生活啦，佢哋根本冇機會去接觸過一啲抗爭嘅信息，所以佢哋比較持續咁樣啦。即係簡單啲嚟講，少年之後阿媽都講翻呢啲咧，就係其實喺美國嘅情況，嗰啲中產嘅人係30-40萬咁樣欠債，即係大家都係負緊債。香港嘅中產好明白債，大家係俾即係點放貸去買樓之類，差唔多係
Yeah. So yeah, this is my understanding of how counterinsurgency works.
If they are living in poverty, they're disconnected from the political atmosphere and
So the way I see it is that actually you're dealing with China, mainland China, who's got a lot of experience in breaking these sorts of movements. They have a lot of experience, and Hong Kong does not have enough experience on how to handle these things. Look at the legal infrastructure. Look at the education. Look at the police force. They're all having pro-Beijing people inserted into key positions, decision-making positions. So if you ask me, how does counterinsurgency happen in Hong Kong? That's how it happens. So. And everybody knows this. Hong Kong people are not stupid. We know which people they are. But the thing is that, what can you do about it? And I think there's a strong sense of apathy in the Hong Kong people at the moment. Like, I don't know. We live with the young people. They're like, okay, let's do something about it. They've got youthful energy, but they don't know how to express that youthful energy in an effective way in order to sort of crack this nut. So having you come around here, giving us this years of experience on how to handle that is valuable, extremely valuable.
There's got to be a lot more propaganda about, the affluent poor. We know they exist, but it has to be put more on the surface. So in a sense, you can gain them as part of the movement. They're not the middle class, so you don't have to worry about them being bourgeoisie or anything like that. They think they are, and they blame themselves for being in debt. Not only that, they also blame the poor for trying to get, food stamps. You don't need no more money. We're doing pretty good being poor. Okay, where's my boat? You're ready to pack up and go. What time is it? You don't care, huh? Hey, old people,
it's now 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. I've never been out this late.
Because they're living in Chinese.
No, we can take the taxi. We'll take the taxi.
It's quite far away. So and also we need some rest to tomorrow's schedule.
Thank you.